Hi, everyone. It is the Ego Project, and I am Lisa Heidle, and I'm here with
Cristine Seidell.
And we are wrapping up, Cristine. We are closing out season 1 of the Ego Project, which is very exciting. And wow, we have a lot to talk about. So Cristine and I decided that we are going to share some of our ego work that we've done through doing the Ego Project, some work that we've been doing personally and through the podcast. And we're also going to talk about some topics that really resonated with us and how we've integrated those into our own lives and the things that we're doing. Then we're going to share what you can look forward to in season 2. Yeah.
Super exciting. Yeah.
It is so exciting.
We did
it. I know. It's so exciting. And it's been such a pleasure doing this with you, Cristine. So I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah.
Tell me about the ego work that you've done on the Ego Project.
Right. I think that the Ego Project was really just kind of this very intuitive inspiration that kind of came about, early 2022. Just feeling like this sense that like these are things that people are really wanting to start talking about. I believe as a collective, we've become so much more curious as to how and why we are the way we are in this moment. And I think as a collective, we have been just really, pursuing some sense of something that's missing. And as a therapist, is really having these conversations with clients, and everywhere from 3-year-olds all the way up to, older clients. You just see this theme of wanting to understand more and really come back to the sense of true self. So it's been a very wild ride, and just kind of starting it and just knowing intuitively to come to you as a person that would be the co-pilot of this podcast. And so it's really crazy to see how just when you listen to something, in your intuition, and you are really authentic with moving forward with it, that it will take shape and find the life that it needs to be. So I think, bringing you on board has been such a privilege to work alongside you, having that creative, understanding as well as, intuitive, mystic perspective, I think is another layer to the therapeutic conversation that we can have about ego. So it's been a wild ride. It's been really, really fun. And I've been lit up every time I've done one of these, even when in the early days where you can probably see a little bit of like nerves, that recording starts and it's like, go, I've been lit up throughout the whole time and just have loved doing every single recording. So it's been amazing. So what about you? How was your 2022, perspective of the Ego Project shaping up?
Well, thank you for saying that. And, I love how this came together because as you were saying, you reached out and said you had this idea and that you thought of me. And it was such perfect timing because I've mentioned in past podcasts that we've done with guests and, between you and I, how I kept feeling like I was supposed to be stepping out and being seen and being heard in a different way than I've ever been. I'm a solitary creature. I enjoy, writing and reading and, I build, websites, which is solitary. So everything that I do, I get out and socialize, but so much of my life is very, with just me and my energy. And I just had felt that push. And so when you reached out and you said you had this idea, did not even hesitate.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, like I knew that was the thing that I was supposed to be stepping into. And so it's just, I've learned so much, talking with you, listening to you, recognizing the importance of using the tools that we're given. And, taking advantage of opportunities and of course the guests that we've had, and we're going to have so many more in 2022 and we'll be talking about that later. But it's just been such a pleasure, and it's so outside of my comfort zone. I'm even a photographer. I'm always on the other side of the camera. And to do this. Now, I have to say, some of my ego work has been about this. So I'm going to share a little bit of the ego work that I've done.
I love that.
Because once again, we take advantage of these opportunities, right? When things show themselves. And then I'm going to throw it back to you about the ego work that you've done. So the ego work that I've done has been, a lot of it is about being seen. People say this all the time, they don't like to have their picture taken. They don't like to hear their voice. And I've struggled a little bit with that, I'm an middle-aged woman and, everything that comes along with that. And also my voice and kind of getting used to hearing myself speak. I'm a reflector. I reflect information and then I like to sit with it. And as a writer, I can do that. I go through my own time with the work in my words. I do beta readers. I do editors before anyone ever sees that work. And this is in the moment.
Yeah.
And we made the decision.
Very intentional about that too. Yeah.
And we made the decision not to edit because we want to do our ego work through this and embrace imperfection. And embrace, just being human and navigating that. And we've done that. And that, for me, stumbling over my words, likes, trying to reflect in the moment and still sound, remotely intelligent. And that has been my work, and it's been good work. And, it's been a lot of ego work around that. So what about you, Cristine?
Well, I love that you've kind of talked about like coming out and being seen, because it reminds me of a phrase, so often we're paralyzed by perfection, and there's no other, I think, microscope like being seen on a platform where they can see your face, they can hear your voice, they can be processing the concepts that you are talking about. So I love that you have kind of shown up in a space to not allow that, being paralyzed to override what a really great perspective you bring to the show and to the listeners, because we all bring something to the table, regardless of our background or our experiences. What we have to say about, our egos, our life, our work is important, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be just like everybody else's. So, I'm excited, and I know that was a tough space for you to come into, because, we are talking about very intimate parts of ourselves, and so I love that you kind of grappled with that in a way that was very public. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable enough to kind of just, express that is something that people who show up in this space oftentimes do really struggle and grapple with as they're showing up week after week. So,
well, and I hope that people, if they take nothing else except this away from listening to the podcast, that you don't have to wait for that perfection. Just try some things, make mistakes, really step out of your comfort zone so that you can have a new experience. And I think so often, our culture that is still shifting and shaping itself and, hopefully growing in a more positive direction for so often we've been taught, like, you don't do something until you perfect it. And that's absurd. Right. And you don't, and especially as a creative, you don't share it until it's
in a very public way. Correct. Yeah.
And I hope that, people can take away that, go take that dance class, even though you trip and your rhythm is off, and you're uncomfortable, send out that piece of work. I mean, whatever it is, do it. And don't judge yourself, don't pre-reject it.
Yeah.
Really,
Don't put yourself in bondage over something that could happen, or something that somebody could say. Allow yourself the freedom to do it just because it feels right for you.
So what ego work have you done? I mean, you really reflected very well about the ego work that I did. And
like a true therapist, right?
In a very positive way. Thank you very much. But I'm going to throw that back to you. What ego work have you done around this?
This has been it's been a very challenging year for me personally. And I think starting the Ego Project was coming off the heels of, growing as a therapist very rapidly with some very high level type of work. I, work with a lot of high conflict families, high conflict systems, where you're really sitting in, very tense, very difficult type of systems that they either love you or they don't like you. And that can turn very quickly, because you're really there as a solution focused therapist. You're there to find solutions to these systems that desperately need them, mostly because they have children in them. And so I'm really doing tough work. So, of course I was, I've been doing that over the last couple of years, and, getting a lot of feedback, mostly positive, but then some that have been very kind of cruel, and not, when they've come back to leave feedback, they don't leave feedback about being a therapist. They leave feedback about my appearance or what they think about me as a woman. And, that has been kind of tough. So as I've been doing that, I also started doing very intense ego work with individuals and seeing this real shift in how they were able to work through their own stuff at a little bit more rapid rate. So I came to the Ego Project with this very kind of conflicting sense of self, which is, I really know that the work I'm doing is important. And I know as a collective, we need to hear more about this. However, I've been wounded by, some of the people who have left these very high conflict systems and have kind of come at me. So I really had to bunker down, really, when we started the Ego Project, as somebody who loves to be out in life and showing people me being lit up and things I love doing. I became very, very quiet because I needed to really just focus on this project and allow my life to be my life, and not public, and not allow things that people were saying about my voice on the podcast or what I looked like or what I was saying. I couldn't even, our viewers don't know this, but I, really put that on you to be like, if I need to hear anything, let me know. But I'm not going to go searching for it, because I need to stay very focused on this being authentic and me moving through the Ego Project with integrity and not allowing outside voices to get to me. Because personally, I was also going through some personal challenges as well, grappling with relationships and, growth within, parent-child relationships. So, there was a lot of personal stuff going on too. So I did really just withdraw and work on that sense of integrity. Am I being true to myself? Am I showing up in a space that is true to not only who I am, but also the work that I do? And then also, am I keeping the boundaries around myself that I need right now to make sure that we continue moving in this direction and not allowing that voice to wound me or, go back to a wounding. So yeah, I mean, I was doing it all: boundaries, integrity, intuition. Yeah, there's a lot of ego work. And, I feel that coming into, the end of season 1, I feel very proud of doing that ego work, because it is, like I said, it's part of what makes this podcast and the reviews we are hearing from other people part of what keeps us wanting to continue. So So yeah.
I thank you for being vulnerable with that and sharing that. I think so often, in with our social media age, people believe what the photo is telling you, or
Right,
and
exactly.
they don't recognize that there's a lot going on behind
Mm-hmm.
that. No one is always happy.
Yeah.
We cannot live a human life without, being wounded, without having struggles and obstacles in our way. And yet all we see are the beautiful
Mm-hmm.
photos, the engagements, the marriages,
Right,
all these things, the accolades, and which is wonderful. We should share those beautiful things.
right,
But the problem comes when we think that that is a reflection of their life, and we start
right.
comparing our life to
Mm-hmm.
their social media life
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Or
our
their
real life.
worth versus our worth because of what
Exactly.
they're doing or achieving or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And so I love that you shared that, because, the one thing that I took away from the Ego Project, in this first season in 2022 is, the paradoxes.
Mm-hmm.
How many people talk about these paradoxes that we run into,
Mm-hmm.
where we are, we're setting boundaries from a wounded place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a paradox, right? We're thinking, oh, I'm doing a healthy thing from
Mm-hmm.
an unhealthy space.
Right.
But
Right.
we have to start somewhere,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Mhm.
We are always manifesting,
Correct.
whether it is good or bad. We are always that's a paradox, right? We
Mhm.
think manifesting should only be giving us the things that we
Right.
want, and in reality it's like you
Like,
really need to be mindful of
yes.
your
100%.
thoughts,
Mhm.
because they will become
Yes.
the things that you're either wanting or not wanting. and
Yeah.
and so I just really, from the guests, from our conversations, from the insight that you've offered, from a
Mhm.
therapeutic viewpoint and your own personal experiences, I love that space we've been given
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
go, okay, yes, it's hard,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's worth it.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And then it doesn't matter how much we try to avoid it, it still calls us, so we might be able to get away with, like, I can avoid it for a little while, but it still calls us, and that's, I think, across all of the, guests we've been able to see, that theme kind of resonate, that the paradox of, you know, not self versus self. It's always there, in whatever way, whether it's manifesting or boundaries or whatever, it really is that paradox between the two.
What thread have you seen weaved through our conversations,
Mhm.
between you and I, and also with the guests? What thread
Yeah.
have you noticed?
I think our first guest was Sarah Verba, and, we were talking about empaths. And I think what's super cool about that conversation is, knowing myself as an empath, you know, or identifying as an empath, but then really starting to lean into the ego and the empath, making that connection was super cool, and something that she said that I was experiencing at the time, and that every single guest has reiterated in some way, shape, or form, is the need to withdraw from life, really, to have alone time, to be with yourself so that you can get clear on what is not working right here, right now. What do I really need to hear myself say? What am I really feeling? Almost clearing out the energy of everybody else. But that alone time to really settle into yourself, to be able to hear yourself, because we have, like you said, we are constantly having conversations with ourselves. We're not always conscious of it, but we're always having those conversations. But those voices may not even be ours. They may be voices of other people that we're picking up along the way, that we've been surrounding around. And so every guest, in one way or another, mentioned pulling back, finding time to be alone, being able to hear your voice, being able to feel who you really are, and then be able to show up in a space where you have that energy to be able to be true to it, little by little by little. And every single guest reiterated that. And I thought it was so cool, because I was doing that in my own life too. So that theme really was weaving throughout the start of the ego project, consciously and unconsciously, with myself and with you, right? I would say you probably were, doing that as well, checking in with yourself, still showing up, even though it was uncomfortable at first. But every guest, discussed periods of their life that they really just kind of had to come and check back in with themselves and be like, and then how they do that as a regular, exercise now. So empath or not, I thought that was such a cool theme that we really were seeing with all of our guests. And I know I was doing that in my own life too. So.
Oh, I thank you for saying that, because I so agree with that. And I've really come to the understanding that we have to listen to that voice that's saying, pull back.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that we can really listen
mm-hmm.
to the voice and attune to it is if we trust our life.
Yeah.
That's the only way we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And trusting our life means we have to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so many of our guests talked about that, like listening not only to themselves, but when in that quiet space, or when they were struggling, asking the people around them
mm-hmm.
for guidance as well.
Yeah.
And, I think that's so valuable to be able to say, yes, I am the voice that I need to listen to, but there's a bigger voice as well that, I can respond to, that's outside of me. I don't know if it's a bigger voice, but another voice. And
right.
So, I love that you shared that you trusted your life enough to pull back into you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also that, that kind of goes along with, other guests bringing in those pieces as well, as like understanding healthy relationships, right? Understanding those healthy support systems, that when you're, sitting with something and you show up in a space, when they speak to you, like, you can feel comfortable in their voice, those relationships that were not certain, that anything that felt disrespectful or uncomfortable, that's our identifier to be like, okay, I might need a boundary here, right? So, but that is, that withdrawing to even just be able to hear what is true to me, and then being able to show up and almost like dabble a little bit with your relationships to see, like, when I share this with somebody, what I'm getting back is that, does that feel comfortable? Does that feel disrespectful? And then be able to build that support system, because every guest did talk about like having a strong support system as you're doing that ego work, which is so true. We are here, yes, as ourselves, but we're also here as a collective too. I need you to be yourself and lit up and doing the things and loving yourself, because that just helps me know myself, love myself, and do my things. We are not isolated, but we can't show up in that space unless we truly can hear our voice and know what it feels like to be true to ourselves.
That's so true. It's beautiful. And I also think, for me, the thing that I've seen doing my own ego work and being on the ego project is I've noticed that there's a space between, something that's said or done, and then my response to it, my reaction to it.
Yeah.
And that may sound like, just a small space, but that's the difference between a positive or a negative reaction.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's a heartbeat space.
Right.
Yeah. And if your heartbeat is coming from, a place of negativity and wounding, then that heartbeat space is going to then give
Yeah.
something out that you don't want, that's going
Yeah,
to
it
damage the
perpetuates
relationship.
that energy. Energy is energy is energy. It's going somewhere,
It's
right?
going somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, that right there is work. And that's
Mhm.
using the tools. And I
Right.
think so often people think, well, when you're doing work, it's this, all of a sudden, reach, nirvana.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not, it's those moments where you have a choice of
Yeah.
how to respond. It's
Mhm.
the moment when you offer a sincere apology to someone that you've harmed
Yeah.
for no reason, other than you recognize that you did not show up in your best self,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
deserve better.
Mhm.
They
And the
deserve,
beautiful, yeah.
yeah.
Right. And the beautiful thing about using those skills and showing up in a space like authentically to be true to yourself and to respect the relationships and the people around you is you actually do get that peace, that joy, that stillness on the other side of them, just as a BOGO, it's just a BOGO. You don't actually have to do this extra work to feel, in alignment and in peace with yourself, because you are showing up to be respectful and to honor yourself. And so all of that actually has that nirvana end result, right? There's almost like you don't have these two roads of work you have to do. One actually leads to the other, when you honor yourself and you do the things to be respectful and authentic. Maybe you don't get the reaction or response you would like from the person that you were maybe trying to repair with, but you actually still feel pretty good about showing up in that space, right? Like when you've done the work on that side, you get kind of the peace and joy, just knowing you're working to come back to yourself.
Oh, they beautifully put, and that's so true. And we don't know where our lives are going to take us. We don't know the people that are going to enter them and leave them. We don't know the opportunities that will show themselves. The only thing that we do know is that we are with ourselves 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And this has to be the main relationship that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do not have that, and it is not a healthy one, and you cannot sit with yourself in stillness
Mm-hmm.
enough to hear yourself, you will be dysregulated when you go out in the world. That is a true statement.
Yeah.
And, and so that's where the work begins, not where it ends, but where it begins.
Yeah. To really believe and know, not with your head, but know in your body that you are good and worthy and valuable because you are. Like, that is a beautiful place to dwell.
That cheered me up, Cristine. Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is so true.
Because that really is, that's what we have to know. That's what we have to believe. And that's, the work is going through and removing those stories, to come back to that. So, and I think that's something that every single guest, every one of them when they have spoken about their work, it is like this holy space that you get to sit with them, because you do see them really striving to live in that space every day. And yes, I mean, we don't get to do the work and cash in our chips and be like, yo, I did it, I'm enlightened. We still have to, those neural pathways, they're still there. It's almost like, you get braces, and then you don't, get the braces off, you love your smile, but if you don't wear your retainer, they have a memory, your teeth have roots and they have a memory, they'll go back. You still have to stay in that space of reminding yourself, and the self-care and all of that stuff. And that's something our guests have really kind of talked about is maintaining and really coming to a place of believing. But you don't just get to believe once. You have to believe every single day. And especially when you move in and out of situations or relationships that may be triggering, that may be a catalyst of wounding, for us. So I think that that's something we have to remember, is this isn't just one-stop shop that as soon as we're like, oh, I feel it, I remember her, my little Cristine, there she is. We don't just get to be like, it's so good to see you again, thanks for coming, and then allow that to go away. We have to come back to visit, to nurture, and remain connected, and that is the beauty of when we do this work, is we want to hang out with our true self more and more and more.
And we hope that the people who are listening and, to the podcast and viewing the YouTube videos, that they know that they are part of this process.
Mm-hmm.
The questions that we ask each other are questions that we're hoping that the listeners are asking themselves.
Yeah.
We're hoping that they're hearing different tools and different ways of viewing situations to help them be able to embrace their authentic self and to heal their wounding. And that's the whole intention of doing this, because it is a project. And it's an ongoing project, and one day it will end, but we're not there yet. So we're going into season 2, and season 2 we are going to have new guests, more guests. What else are we going to have, Cristine?
I think the guests are going to be cool. Something I'll kind of just piggyback on, from what we were just talking about, is that like even the stories that our listeners have shared with us, we'll get messages just saying, hey, I listened to this and it reminded me of my childhood, and I really just am so I so appreciate somebody kind of putting words to it. Like that is so, like that too is holy space for us, like that somebody wants to share that. And so when we talk about guests, we have a lot of guests lined up, for multiple different reasons, but I want to encourage people who have been like moved by the podcast. Like you don't feel like you have to be bringing, all of these accolades, or you've been on all these different podcasts. We love people who are just aware and inspired and intuitively feel like they have something that they want to share, which are the people who are reaching out, saying things to us, and telling us about their experiences. We would love for people just to reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in, sharing my story, or I'm interested in talking about this one facet of what we talked about. So, that is something, more guests, that we have lined up, and those that, may be interested in coming on as well. The other thing, which I think is kind of cool, is that, I think we've worked really hard to not be the faces of the Ego Project. We really, I think, have provided, perspective, and, some from more mystical, some from a more therapeutic, some from spiritual, some from, personal experiences. But I feel like, we really have tried to be the face of every person, right? But a cool thing of 2023 is that I think the listeners and the watchers are going to get a glimpse into how our ego work over the last year has actually started manifesting some pretty cool things in 2023 for us, and personally and professionally, and how we can share a little bit of, when you do this work and you come back to self, how manifesting and receiving the things that you desire actually isn't something that it gets to be effortless, and it gets to be easy. We don't have to grit and grime our way through life, once we start kind of coming back to true self. So I'm excited to share that part of 2023 on the Ego Project as well. What about you? What do you want the listeners and watchers to know?
Well, I so agree with you. The work that I know that I've personally been doing over the last couple of years, especially this past year, has been, I'm starting to see some shifts and some changes, and I'm excited to kind of step out even more and get out into the world, sharing the work that I'm doing, doing other creative projects, meeting other people, out in the world, and, embracing travel, because that is one of the passions. And so we will be coming to you from different and unique locations as well, with new people. And I love that you said that about, yes, we're having guests, some, that we've reached out to, some have reached out to us. So please reach out at theegoproject.com. We have a contact form on there. If you have a story about the work that you've done, because the ego, the healthy ego and the wounded ego, it's a very broad topic. Okay. Yeah, we've got a lot to cover here, and a lot of ways to help people grow and heal and embrace a life where you're thriving.
Yes,
not just surviving. We can, the last few years has been definitely a survival mode for a lot of people.
It has been,
and we really feel that with support, people can start to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and those are also things that, if there are topics that people, are interested in hearing, send those as well. We have a list of topics that that continues to grow. I think as a collective, we're so fascinated with how we have developed different personalities, how we have developed different types of relationships that with ourselves and with others. So I think we're ever curious as to how to know more and how to become, more in align with ourselves and true to ourselves. And we've covered some really cool topics, but I know we have a ton more, infinite more. I don't think we could ever stop talking on the Ego Project about this.
Well, and some topics that we're going to be talking about, parental wounding. We're going to be talking about spirituality, even a deeper dive into that. We're going to be talking about masculinity. We're going to talk about being a caregiver in the world. I mean, there's just so many topics that we're going to be exploring, and I'm very excited about bringing these people. And we're also going to be bringing more therapists who have diverse specialties, and we're going to be talking about those. We have some psychotherapists lined up, and what else, Cristine? I know we have a lot more. Oh, the wellness industry.
Yes, the wellness industry, and we're and adult friendships, and a lot of and more about relationships, intimate relationships, looking more at those as well. I know we have some listeners that have learned a lot about new budding relationships, and then also about relationships, that have been longstanding. So, we have a lot that we're going to talk about, and, a lot of, people have asked about like personality disorders and cluster Bs, and those are things that we're going to talk about too, just because, it's a vernacular that is used very commonly, but it's important that we know and we understand, where this all kind of comes from, and how we need to be mindful of calling people certain things without understanding truly who they are and what their wounding may be. So I think it's not only just things we can learn about ourselves, but also how to move through this world with a perspective that's more in alignment with what is really going on instead of what we want to project it to be. So lots of cool things. I'm excited.
Me too. I really am. And Cristine, I want to thank you for, being such a pleasure to talk with, to explore with, to, brainstorm with. And, it's collaborating with someone who is open-minded, with a growth mindset, and who, only intention is to make the world a better place. It's been a true pleasure. Season 1.
No, I'm gonna all teary-eyed too. But no, I so appreciate you, and just you have been just such a generator for this the Ego Project, that as I've had to take that season of withdrawing to be true to myself and to show up in the space, you've really shown up in ways that I could never thank you enough for. And so I'm so looking forward to 2023 being a year for you that you get to come back to really manifesting the things that you have been desiring and talking about. And I can't wait to see what cool things are going to come about for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, if there is a topic that you would like us to explore, either, in just Cristine and I, with a guest, with yourself, drop it in the comments, please. And if you enjoyed season 1, please leave us a heart or star, a thumbs up, a
Review,
smiley.
yeah, we're starting to get those. That's exciting to see. I know that.
Just give us, a little feedback on that you're out there, because we feel you.
Yeah,
we know you're out there, and we just want to reach more people and hope that, once again, people who need to hear what we're saying, they will find us.
Absolutely. Fully believe in it. Absolutely.
All right. Looking forward to season 2.
Me too. Me too. Happy New Year.
You too. All right. See you in 2023, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.